Ladies and gents, welcome to CG Reaction. This is Saladin and the Third Crusade. The Third Crusade, Extra History Part 3 by the channel Extra Credits. Yeah, so Saladin took Jerusalem and Pope learned of that and got a heart attack, apparently. At the start, when the king of Jerusalem and all the princes around it, I guess, they tried to take Hatim, one port city, right, or something like that. Hatim, they were trying to take one city. I don't know which city's name was that. And during that, Saladin basically, crushed all of them because there was no unity between them. And Saladin basically united, I guess, Islamic forces under him, basically. So he was in advantage position. So he took them down, took over Jerusalem. And now I guess everybody else, other Christian kingdoms are going to join in because now Jerusalem is Lord. And true cross of Jesus Christ is with them. I guess the people are going to be pissed now. So let's watch it.
City of Acre, September 1189. The force of 8,000 Christians stands before the defensive walls, dug in between the port city and the shore. Among them flies the banner of Guy de Lusignan, the dispossessed king of Jerusalem, and until recently, Saladin's captive. Saladin could destroy them now, and perhaps he should. Acre's garrison forces were larger than the besieging army, and Saladin's troops lay in wait. But he had also heard that the army of Frederick Barbarossa, king of the Holy Roman Empire, plans to march into Syria via Turkey, so he can't afford to pin himself down or reduce his dwindling forces. Then he sees dots on the horizon. Ships. All along the sea. Reinforcements from France, Germany, and Italy. He attacks, but the window for an easy victory has been lost. And the struggle for Acre will be one of the bloodiest engagements of Saladin's career, and the opening battle of the Third Crusade. Though the capture of Jerusalem was Saladin's most triumphant moment, it also marked the pinnacle of his power and influence. For years, he had advocated that the full powers of the Islamic world be placed into his hands, with leaders setting aside disagreements over religion, politics, and ethnicity in order to retake Jerusalem. But now that that objective had been achieved, that unifying sense of jihad began to fracture. Old rival.
Oh yeah, that is so true, right? I didn't even thought of that. In previous part, he took over Jerusalem. He started this by unifying Islamic states by basically just saying that we should put aside all our differences for this kind of basically a goal. So as soon as he took the Jerusalem, right, a holy city in Islamic, world as well, obviously now the alliance is going to fall. Like, okay, he achieved his goal. So what would bind them? Up until now, the goal of taking Jerusalem was binding them. Now they have Jerusalem.
Rivalries and differences re-emerged, along with a new concern that Saladin and his Ayyubid dynasty was becoming a bit too powerful. Troops began trickling back to their original rulers, with many never coming back. And just as this Islamic coalition began to splinter, Europe united under a new crusade. In the near century since the First Crusade, support for crusading efforts had ebbed and flowed. European kings might send money, but they only rallied to go to the Holy Land personally during times of obvious crisis. And the disaster at Hattin, the loss of the true cross, and the capture of Jerusalem was one heck of a big rallying cry. This crusade, however, was different than previous ones. The recruitment message was much more coordinated via the church, the goals more clear. In fact, a new vernacular developed around the effort. While participants in
I highly doubt any crusade can be as chaotic as the first one. That was just a weird clusterfuck. Nothing's going to be, I guess, that unorganized.
Previous efforts had termed themselves pilgrims. Now the act of joining was increasingly called taking the cross, a term which led to the modern term crusader. And much of this effort was focused personally on Saladin. Depicted as unfathomably evil by Christian propagandists, he was referred to by preachers as the son of Satan, and depicted in illuminated manuscripts as one of the 7 heads of the dragon of the apocalypse, which is metal AF if you ask me. Plus, kings going on crusade instituted a new tax to fund their military efforts, aptly named the Saladin Tithe. But it's important to remember that these European leaders were no more united than Saladin's fragile alliance. In fact, of the 3 kings who joined the crusade, the only one beginning their quest relatively quickly, Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, set out on his journey in April of 1189, whereas Richard I of England and Philip II of France, by contrast, spent several years squabbling first. While Richard took the cross almost immediately, when he was still a prince, he had to settle some matters before he could leave. Namely, Richard wanted to be King of England, so he allied himself with Philip of France to fight a war against his own father, and he won. As you can Can imagine Richard's family politics were a bit bonkers. Anyway, Richard became king while also holding vast territories in France. But that made going on crusade a bit awkward for Richard and Philip. See, Richard's holdings in France were actually more valuable than Philip's, and each wanted to usurp the other out to rule all of France. But now, both were rallying Crusader armies next door to each other, meaning they had to agree to set out for Palestine at the exact same time, so neither of them could invade the other's territory once they were gone. So Saladin, who knew taking Jerusalem would mean fending off a crusade, had some time to prepare. But he didn't. In fact, he kinda squandered his momentum. Though, in fairness, his troops were exhausted from years of drawn-out warfare against the Crusader states, and he likely wanted to preserve his fragile alliance by taking easy victories. He swept up small fortresses and cities that he could argue into capitulating without a fight, sometimes even trading high-value captives for them. Anything to avoid costly and demoralizing sieges. But this meant that he left the city of Tyre, its defenses swelled by Christian refugees from Jerusalem and other cities, as a center of resistance and an easy place for Crusaders to disembark. Another major mistake was letting King Guy of Jerusalem go.
Yeah, okay, so, all sides are playing political games because, yes, Crusade is the goal, but they also have to preserve their own kingdoms, I guess. So, Richard the Lionheart, Philip of France, there is a rivalry there, so they have to set out together, otherwise, like, where that guy go? They will basically panic. And in here, obviously, Saladin is also playing political game because, all the Islamic states that were with him, after taking Jerusalem, their alliance would crumble. Right, and I think, he didn't make a blunder by keeping the last city, at the port there. I think he did that to show the Islamic world, like, okay, see, that goal is not unfinished. There's still Christians here that needs to be taken out or something. Because if we had taken that place over, all the Islamic world would be like, okay, that's it, right? No need to, we have the holy city and everything. There is no threat, all right. Let's everybody go in their merry way, and all the soldiers would have left. By the time, Richard the Lionheart and the entire Third Crusade basically arrives. So I guess he kept that place deliberately to, keep the pressure on the Islamic states, like goal is not over or something like that.
An act so mind-bogglingly reckless, historians still argue about his motive. He may have simply felt bad for Queen Sibylla, as Saladin always had a soft spot for his rivals' families, and he did love to be generous even to the point of recklessness. In fact, his lieutenants actually used to hide money to prevent him from giving it away. Or perhaps he thought that Guy would create discord among the other Crusaders, who were competing to replace him. Whatever the reason, he miscalculated.
Look, man, you can't become the, big leader like Saladin by not being somewhat conniving, right? So I don't think it's just because of soft spot. I think he played that, mind game, basically. If I let him go, all the Crusaders would come there, basically, to replace him because they are fighting for Jerusalem. Why wouldn't they take Jerusalem? But there's already Jerusalem's king there. So that would create this kind of instability.
After a noble named Conrad, who had seized and defended Tyre after Hattin, refused Guy entrance into the city, the dispossessed king rallied a small army and put Acre to siege. And then came Saladin's worst mistake, dawdling rather than committing forces to destroy Guy, which drew the Third Crusade to his small army like a magnet. Saladin finally hit the Christian camp on October 4th of 1189, but by then it was too late to be easy. The combined forces of the Crusader kingdoms and the foreign reinforcements numbered 30,000, and they were in high spirits. Crossbowmen savaged the Muslim front ranks, followed by a charge of men-at-arms and heavy knights. Saladin's right wing, his weakest troops, broke, and the Crusader forces stormed all the way into Saladin's camp. But there, the Crusaders broke ranks to plunder, as they seemed to always kinda do. Then Saladin hit them with force, sending them fleeing from the slaughter. Other Christians, seeing their companions routed, believed the battle lost and broke, only to then find themselves attacked by Acre's garrison that sallied out to join the battle. Then Saladin sent the enemy corpses down the river so they'd float through the Crusader camp. It was a victory, but barely. Several of Saladin's commanders had lost their fortunes due to the Christian plundering, and the near defeat wrecked morale. He had not relieved Acre, and Saladin could not commit his whole military force to dislodging them, for Frederick Barbarossa would invade Syria within months. So Saladin entered the thing he desperately wanted to avoid, the grind of endless siege warfare. And with both sides...
I got to say, man, even with that kind of odds, Saladin still came victorious, right? Where were the leaders of the crusade at the time, right? I mean, obviously soldiers would see that and panic, like, holy shit, the battle is lost. But shouldn't the leader of the crusade at the point, like Saladin, but from the Christian side, of whoever was leading this crusade, this portion of it at least, wouldn't they see it through like, okay, maybe this is just battle? Where were the commanders who were giving orders? This feels like, very like, unorganized attack by the crusaders. If, there was so many confusion like that.
Besides controlling portions of the port, they could both endlessly reinforce by sea, the result of which was a double siege. The Christians dug in, besieging Acre, and Saladin dug in to besiege the Christian besiegers. A turducken of siege, if you will. Harassing fire from catapults peppered Acre's defenders. Crusader barges with tall siege engines rode into port as floating artillery platforms, until Saladin's own siege engines burned them down with pots of incendiary Greek fire. Both sides captured men and tortured them within view of the enemy, and the besiegers used anything, including human bodies, to fill in the defensive trenches before Acre. Whatever was thrown in, the Muslim defenders had to pull out. When the Christians did breach the wall, the garrison would sally out to fight the besiegers, while engineers in the city hastily repaired the damage. Saladin's only stroke of luck came in June of 1190, when he received word that Frederick Barbarossa had been thrown from his horse while crossing a river in Anatolia, and the German king drowned in his heavy armor, leaving his contingent leaderless and racked with disease. And while a few managed to arrive at Acre, they did so just in time to suffer through one of the worst winters Palestine had seen in decades. Their food so short, the Crusaders ate pack animals, and possibly even human corpses.
Whoa.
And then, 18 months in...
That is a great news for Saladin, isn't it? Barbarossa is, coming there. Oh, look at that. He died. Holy shit. Just like that. He died. And look at that. The winter came, but more dangerous than it's been for decades. It's like stars just aligned just for Saladin at that point.
Into the siege, Richard and Philip arrived, and things changed. Because they brought with them enormous catapults named... Wait, no. Really? Named Bad Neighbor and God's Own Catapult. Oh, I'm loving this. So expensive were they to maintain that a priest had to stand by them during their operation, praying and asking for donations to pay for repairs when they broke down or were damaged. An equally large Muslim catapult, dubbed Bad Relative, returned fire. This was a new type of siege warfare. The previous catapults could do no more than harass and injure defenders, but these named beasts knocked great holes in the defensive walls. It was clear Acre would fall. Yet something else appeared in Saladin's camp. A diplomat secretly sent by Richard without Philip's knowledge. Richard, ill with scurvy and calling on codes of chivalric honor, asked for a gift of fruit and ice, and he suggested they meet for talks. Saladin, ever hospitable to enemies, sent the requested peaches, dates, figs, and ice, along with a message. No meeting, not until they had a peaceful truce. For if the kings met as friends, then later fought, it would bring dishonor on both of them. And fight they would, in a battle that would stand as one of the greatest personal rivalries in all of history.
Yeah, one thing's for damn sure, Saladin's principles are really strong, right? He doesn't let go of them, right? He's like, okay, if we come to a truce and then fight, that would be dishonorable, and we can't have that, right? He lets go of people. He has soft spot for the family member of the captured people, I guess. Whenever somebody finds gold, they have to hide it from him. He's a really principled man, I guess. And, so far, Crusade, this is nowhere near as a clusterfuck as the first Crusade was. It's really stable with basically good names like Richard the Lionheart, basically leading these Crusades, right? The Barbarossa died of the Holy Roman Empire, which was a threat to Saladin. That was just the right amount of luck that Saladin needs. If you go back in time and see any of the big names, right, even from the likes of Julius Caesar, you see that in lots of their battles, they had just the right luck because certain things happen just the right way to benefit them. That is just something. Because, if Barbarossa, who would have thought he just rode there from all the way to Holy Roman Empire to all the way to here, right, to attack them, and it just in the end he drowned. Holy shit. And then at that time, a massive winter came, really cold winter came. That is something. Alright, people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe. Check out the Rick Sunday, there's a link in the description. Check out the cast for place, check out the in cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.